Is Ethena USDE the next Terra Luna? Are we running it back? Are we going to make a wildly large stablecoin that's going to depeg and rug everyone to zero? Let's get into it. So I'm going to do a little bit of analysis on the crypto market and the markets in general. But I've been seeing this new stablecoin in the last 7 weeks. It went from zero to $2 billion market cap, and the yield is 67%. So we're going to talk about what the yield, how that's created, what happens when that yield goes away, and also what it means for trading. But the first thing I'll say is there's no way that's sustainable, and it may be creating hidden leverage in the system. It feels like a top signal, right? It reminds me of late 2021 when there was crazy yields on stablecoins and different projects. This to me is dangerous, and we need to get into the mechanics. But is it the same as Terra Luna? No, it works different. Are there risks to the system if this thing gets huge, which it went from 0 to 2 billion in 7 weeks? Yes. So what Ethena is it's a stable coin and it's backed by the stable coin is cut in half. The backing, essentially, 50% goes to staked ETH, which is earning a yield, and 50% goes to perp short ETH, which is earning a yield. And though that combined is the yield. So let's look at the two parts of that. First, let's look at the funding rate, and let's go look at the funding rate for ETH. So the funding rate right now, depending on where you're shorting, is anywhere from 30% over a year, 13% to 37%. So let's take the lower end of that right now and say 10%, let's say 15%. So half of the yield is 7.5% right now. Right? Why was it 67% when this article was posted? This article was posted, what's the date on this? This article was posted, is there no date on this article? No, March 8th. Okay. On March 8th, where was the funding rate on March 8th? The funding rate on March 8th was way up here, right? Funding rate was much higher. Okay, it's been coming down. So the first thing I'll say is that for me as a trader, the funding rate has been an incredibly excellent indicator that is no longer going to be a great indicator. Why is it no longer going to be a great indicator? It's no longer going to be a great indicator because this trading inefficiency is going to get arbitraged away. Ethena is already supposedly 20% of open interest, or arguably, I don't know if it's 20% of open interest or 20% of the short float, but this is gonna not be able to get super positive again, possibly, which means in the past as a trading signal, I've used this. A lot of traders use this to identify tops in the market, but now the funding rate is going to be suppressed, right? There's a huge amount of non-directional short traders, which is Ethena, which is masking how much leverage is actually in the system. So one thing is the funding rate looks low, but there's proportionally more directionally long leverage traders than um, you would otherwise think because of Ethena. So that's half of the yield. The other half is staked ETH yield. So what is the yield on ETH? It's saying 3.76% right now, 9 days ago. 3.76%, so half of it. So we'll say 2%. So 0.2, 2% times half plus 7 times 15 times half, right? So half the yield is about 4%, and half the yield is about 15%, right? So in theory, the yield on Ethena right now would be just under 10%. Now, the question is, what could go wrong? So what the yield will go away, right? What happens when funding becomes negative? If funding is more negative for a sustained period of time, then the uh, reward rate, say funding is negative 10% for a year, and the staked ETH is 4%. So now it's running at a loss. And in theory, they've grown this insurance fund to protect it, but people are going to want to exit at that point. The arbitrage opportunity is done. It's not, and they're running a loss. So the issue is they're going to need to potentially exit their positions. And in theory, it's market neutral because they have, say, it gets to 10 billion, 5 billion long ETH and 5 billion short ETH. Or they're 5 billion spot ETH, 5 billion short ETH, and they need to unwind the positions. It's not necessarily that simple to do. It's not that simple as me or you and going long, closing a 10 or 100 ETH long, right? Or a 1 ETH long. It's not that simple. Can like what happens when you need to try to unwind $10 billion of positions and there's a lot of panic at the same time, right? I mean, you could, with that size, you can slowly exit over a period of weeks, months, and not worry about slippage and all that. But what's going to happen over a period of days, or if you need to do it in one day? There could be problems. There could be a bottleneck that doesn't allow you to get out. Maybe it gets depegged, and there's all kinds of other leverage that's spouting up around this thing, which I'm not going to get into detail in, but the question is how big will it get? And it's going to get big because of human greed, right? It has to get as big as it can before something happens at DPEGs. Now, will a DPEG mean it will go to zero? No, it doesn't seem like it would. I don't think it can go to zero like Terra Luna, but it could be catastrophic in some way too, right? What could happen is it goes to what, $100 billion? No, probably that's not really possible, but it gets massive and needs to get unwound. And right, I mean, what's the most that it can actually lose in value? Because it's neutral in theory. It's just whatever the cost of getting out of the positions is in theory. So um, to me, it's a big question mark. Can it go to zero? As it's as it's purportedly built, no, it can't go to zero like Terra Luna could. Can it depeg? Yes. Will it yield forever? No. What would happen when the yield breaks? The question mark is what happens when you try to exit $10 billion of ETH positions at one time. And in theory, it's neutral, but there may be bottlenecks or there may be some kind of chaos involved. So I don't know exactly what could go wrong when you try to unwind such large positions, but I do know I'm not, I've seen this before and I want nothing to do with it. So you do your own homework. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that I'm wrong. And yeah, curious to hear your thoughts as well. So much love. Appreciate you. Look forward to talking to you soon. Peace.